There are places in this world that feel unfinished. Edges where the land gives up, where the sea keeps secrets, where even the wind sounds like it's warning you to turn back. 3 men once stood guard on a scrap of rock just like that, miles from anyone, swallowed by fog thick enough to blur the horizon. They kept the lamps burning night after night, trusting that solid ground beneath their feet. But sometimes the world shifts under you. Sometimes the dark moves closer. And sometimes the only thing left behind is the feeling that something went wrong long before anyone noticed. Tonight we're going back to that place, a lonely outpost carved out of stone and storms, to ask a question that's lingered for over a century. What happens when fear takes root in a place already claimed by fate? Welcome to the House of Syx. Tonight we present Fog, Fear, and Fate.
Walkways, storm gear, and strict procedures for everything. The job, the island, the design, where all of it was meant to take the chaos of the sea and lock it down. Okay? What are you looking at? But here is the kicker. On this tiny island with all of those rules, all that engineering, all the structure, you had 3 men who were supposed to be the epitome of order, holding back nature's madness. But nature doesn't always play along. You know what I'm saying? So guys, this shit's about to go down. Do you know anything about lighthouse keeping? Nobody does.
No.
I mean, like, the one thing you have to do as a lighthouse keeper.
Change the bulbs. Or keep the light on.
Okay, dude, we're in 1900. There are no bulbs.
Oh, keep the flame going.
You bet your ass you do.
I wasn't thinking about that.
So what is lighthouse keeping? Because we got to talk about this, because we got to know. So the first job, don't let the light go out. Never. Daytime, nighttime, it doesn't matter. The lamps were not electric. They burned oil, kerosene, or gas. Those are all gas, but whatever. They needed constant tending. The wicks charred. Yeah, they burned, but whatever. I don't know anything about this. The lenses got fogged up because it's water. It's glass. And the wind tried to extinguish the flames, obviously. Keeping the lighthouse alive was a 24/7 job. It was not a chore. And you didn't just check on it every now and then. You basically live this, right? And here, weather is the boss. You had to climb external ladders that were external, so salt, ice, water, which is ice, cold. And you had to repair shutters in storms. You had to clean snow or sleet from glass, so, ships didn't die. And you had to brace the entire structure against winds that were there to erode everything around it. So yeah, in storms, this would be bad news bears. And then obviously you had maintenance constantly. You had to polish the brass, scrub sea salt deposits, lenses that you had to clean. You had to mend ropes, repair doors, paint, keep everything painted, because if the water got to it, it was done. Are you listening to any of this?
I'm listening to every bit of it.
Okay. Logbooks, you were supposed to log everything. Reset clocks, because, you had to wind the clocks all the time to make sure that you had to know what time it was.
Logbooks, like checked on flames on.
Well, I think it's more like logging, like the repairs, what happened, what went down. Okay. There's 3 of you, so you also had to log, if somebody left, you had to log that. Okay. You log everything.
Okay.
This is not my job. There were no radios, no neighbors. You couldn't pop out if you needed something. And many lighthouse keepers fell into depression, anxiety, paranoia, alcohol dependency, violent disputes, and then total psychological burnout, because they are alone, surrounded by nothing.
Yeah.
This would be tough. Even if there's 3 of you, can you imagine on just a tiny... we're going to go...
Especially if you didn't like somebody.
Especially if you didn't like somebody. And you did not get to choose who you were there with. This is a job. Can you imagine with some of your coworkers? Oh, shit. Oh. Woo. Anyways, so the most important thing is teamwork for lighthouse shifts. 2 or 3 men rotating through days and nights. If one person slacked, if they got injured, if one person mentally checked out, everything falls apart. Now, I like to set the scene of what it looks like because the Flannan Isles are very small. It's about 39 acres, which is less than half a mile long, the entire island. There are steep cliffs on almost every single side and sheer drop-offs up to 150 feet into the Atlantic. That sounds terrifying.
It's far enough.
That's too far. It is no trees. Barely any soil, grass, moss, seabirds. God, I hate birds. Birds are gross, and they're rude, and they're loud. I hate birds. They're dirty. I hate birds.
You do.
I get really irked when it's like December, like it is now, as you can see from the Christmas decorations behind us, and birds are freaking chirping outside in the morning, and I'm like, fly south, bird. What are you doing? Fly, fly, fly. I know we are the South, but also you should not be chirping at 8 o'clock in the morning in December. Do that in April. I hate birds. So anyways, the lighthouse structure was built in 1899. So this is less than a year ago, okay? It was designed by the Stevenson Engineering Dynasty. It wasn't a tower-only structure. It had 3 main components. It had the lighthouse tower, which was 75 feet tall. It was white masonry round, like, a lighthouse. It had an internal staircase with no external ladders, so that's nice. A lot of lighthouses just had external ladders to get up there. Mm-mm. What? That sounds terrifying. And there was a lantern room at the top with a powerful lens that could be seen 24 miles away with just kerosene lighting.
That's pretty crazy. That's a lot of mirrors.
That's amazing. Well, they were lenses. They weren't mirrors.
Oh.
They were lenses. So it was like, the concave.
You asked me what I know about them. I don't know shit.
No, same. I just did. I looked this up. This is ChatGPT.
24 miles is long.
Yeah. That's crazy. The keeper's quarters was a long, low, connecting building attached to the base of the circular lighthouse, and it contained bedrooms, kitchen, storage, and a common room. There were thick stone walls to withstand winds that could peel shingles sideways. Holy smokestacks. Everything reinforced because furniture could slide across the floor during storms. This North Atlantic, I'm not going. There was also utility and storage structures. There was a separate stone outhouse, oil storage building, which was explosive because it contained all the oil for the lanterns. So it was a good distance away, but still only less than half a mile because we're on a tiny rock. And there was a landing area for supplies, although landing is generous if you talk about the 150-foot cliffs. I think they basically just got the boat close enough and threw like random oranges to the side to them. That's what I had in my head.
Sure.
I don't think that's what happened. There's probably a pulley system or something.
That's what I'm thinking.
That's some human ingenuity, the pulley right there. That's an amazing little gadget. I don't know how they work. I'm dumb. The lighthouse sits at the highest point around 275 feet above sea level. It's terrifying. The southwestern side has the worst of the cliffs. That's the 275. That's that side. The other's 150 because whatever. The northern and the eastern approaches are slightly gentler, meaning you just break one leg instead of all of them. And then there's a stone staircase that led from the landing to the main complex, and I imagine that was slippery as fuck with all the seawater. It's just off. Like, all of this sounds terrible. And then there were terraces carved into the land to prevent erosion. Okay. It's terrible. And nature's rude, so waves could reach more than halfway up the cliffs.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
It's 75,
Yeah.
50 to 75 foot. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was not uncommon for boulders the size of refrigerators to just break off the cliffs and fall into the sea.
Sure.
So I'm setting the scene here. That's good. So the three dudes who were the keepers on Flannan Isles, the first we've got James Ducat. He was the head keeper. He was in his mid-40s. He is the principal lighthouse keeper. He is a longtime veteran keeper, and he had decades of service. He was known to be extremely reliable, calm, steady, known as conscientious to a fault. He followed procedure no matter what, even when he was alone. Like, he's a by-the-books kind of guy. And he previously worked at multiple lights and never had a disciplinary issue. This is all important, obviously. We have a mystery on our hands. Okay, number 2, we have Thomas Marshall. He is the second assistant keeper, late 20s to early 30s. It's really weird that we don't know their names, but this is 1900. He's the second in command. He only had a few years as a keeper, competent but not as seasoned as Ducat. He was also by the book. He was ambitious but very serious. He was previously fined for losing equipment during a storm on an earlier posting. This was not negligence. The storm was just that bad, but he got fined for it, and it wasn't his fault.
Okay.
So,
Just a fine for Mother Nature.
like, what? That's rude. Apparently, he was deeply embarrassed and vowed to never let it happen again. So that's interesting. I just did a Keith Morrison. I don't know if you felt that.
Oh, I didn't, but that's a good.
Oh, well,
That must have been odd.
And then we have Donald MacArthur. He was an occasional keeper, and I'm using quotes on occasional. They were called occasionals.
Okay.
He was in his mid-40s. He was a temporary stand-in keeper. He was not a full lighthouse man. He rotated in when others needed to leave. And he was known as physically strong, loud, rough-edged, well-liked, former soldier, so probably regimented, sometimes described as having a temper, but nothing that suggested instability. He was a dependable worker, but not trained to the same level as of procedures of strictness as Ducat and Marshall.
Okay.
Now, the official protocol for leading station. This is the rules of lighthouse keeping in the year 1900. One man was always required to remain inside the lighthouse. There is no deviation here. 2 could be outside doing work in normal situations. 1 is always inside with the light and the logbook, and this was non-negotiable. No exceptions for weather, drama,
Nothing.
emergency. So if all 3 left, that is a major breach of regulation. Weather checks were constant and determined whether exterior work could even happen. So they had to monitor the sea state, assess wind speed, all of those things. And the light had to be manned continuously. The flame, if the flame went out, because that did happen with the winds and the water and all these other things, 1 man had to stay inside to relight it, and the others would go out to gather oil, trim wicks. I don't know what that means, except that they were cutting rope that makes wicks. I don't know how that works. So anyways, if it went dark, everything had to be done to get the lighthouse restarted again. So, people didn't die. Timelines here, okay? The lighthouse had only been operating for about a year. The 3 keepers were working a standard rotation. There was a 4th man, Joseph Moore, who was scheduled to replace one of them soon, and it was already overdue because there were storms that were going on in the area around the time. There is a steamer sailing from Philadelphia to Leith, the Arctur. It passed Flannan Island around midnight on December 15th, and they saw no light. The seas were bad, but nothing unusual that they could tell. If a vessel goes by a lighthouse and notice that it is not lit, They are required to report it immediately. Maritime Custom and Northern Lighthouse Board expectations expected them to, bearing in mind that it depended on how long it took them to reach land, make the notifications.
That's what I'm going to say, yes. I mean, reported immediately. You mean like in a week?
In this case, they reached the next port on December 18th, which was 3 days. And from there, depending on how long it took to get that message to all of the people it needed to reach so that they could get somebody out there in the rough seas and the weather and whatever else. Yeah. Meanwhile, on shore at the Lighthouse base station, the lack of wireless communication meant that missed signals were normal. If a lighthouse went quiet, the assumption was that there was a storm. So wireless communication did exist in 1900, but it was not standard, and it had not made it to the Flannan Isles yet. So there was no way to communicate off of the island.
That's what I figured.
So it was just the ships that came in and reported what was going on. After the ARC tour on December 15th, saw that the lighthouse was out. On December 18th, when they reached port, they made the notifications. And by the time it went through all the channels, they sent out a relief vessel on December 26th. This was the Hesperus, and it was sent out nearly 2 weeks after the last beam had been seen. Captain Harvey noted several unsettling things the moment they approached the isle. There was no flag on the flagstaff, no keepers waiting on the landing platform, no crates or rope work staged for the usual resupply procedures. Everything was still and eerie, is how it was reported. Although I feel like some of these reports are somewhat exaggerated now that we know what we know. In any event, when the landing crew approached the island, they saw the east landing was battered and partially damaged, which was not unusual in the winter, but not trivial considering. And still there was no sign of the men. Relief keeper Joseph Moore was the first to enter the lighthouse, and in his written account, he found the kitchen table set but abandoned. Food was partially eaten. The clock had stopped. Obviously, 2 weeks had gone by. Nobody had been winding it. The lamps were cleaned and ready to be lit. 2 coats were missing from the hooks. One was still left behind. And the logbook was updated only up until December 15th. There was no sign of a struggle, fire, storm, damage, forced entry, nothing. I don't know why there would be forced entry. There's 3 of them.
Yeah.
On a half a mile island area.
And to be clear, the light's still out, correct?
The light is still out. Okay. Yes. It looked like, because the dinner was set and only half eaten, it looked like they had stepped out for a moment and just not returned. Moore checked every room, calling for the men. Nothing. He checked the storehouses, the tool sheds, the cliffs, the stairs. Nothing. These 3 men disappeared off of this little rock. They're gone. All right. So the search was expanded. Captain Harvey ordered a full search of the island. Searchers found that rope boxes were overturned, iron railings were twisted at the west landing, a life buoy was missing, grass was torn up near the cliff edge, not like from weather, but like something had dug into the ground, and there was evidence of a recent storm surge. It was storming. On the surface, this seemed like probably a storm, but there were small things that were just like the grass torn up.
Didn't add up.
It does not add up. The West Landing is the most dangerous spot on the island, and it's where the keepers did the most heavy lifting for gear retrieval and storm response work. The signs suggested someone had, maybe all of them, had been out during very rough conditions. But if 1 or 2 men had gone out, why were there only 2 coats missing instead of 3? It was very cold. It's cold. It's freaking December in Scotland. It's freaking cold.
Cold and wet.
It's cold and wet. You need your coat. That's a lifeline. Not a real lifeline, but like a warmth line.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, okay. So anyways, let's talk about the logbook. You were asking about this earlier. They were required to keep a daily log on weather, visibility, chores, mechanical tasks, personal notes, and anything affecting safety. The log at Flannan would have lived in the living quarters, not in the lantern room. It would have stayed downstairs, and it is required to be updated at least once a day. All right, so this is standard procedure. Now, there are some very famous quotes out of this logbook, and they are things like storms raging, seas beyond anything I have ever seen, Ducat crying, Marshall is praying, God is over all. These quotes show up everywhere if you look up this case, and they are most certainly absolute bullshit. These were brought up well after this situation was initially reported, and there's nothing that says that these are true. In fact, the last confirmed log entries are on December 13th, 1900, and the last entry was, everything in it was mundane. There was weather, chores, daily operations, nothing about storms beyond normal expectations that time of year, nothing about emotional breakdowns, nothing about fear, divine terror, intervention, despair, none of that. It seems, these reports seems to have originated in the 1920s and 30s when people were trying to get attention and sell stories in the papers. You know how I feel about newspaper sensationalism. It's really irksome. I think it's a bunch of crap. And none of these, God is overall, get out. Ducat is not crying. This was like a seasoned Lighthouse man. He's not crying. He didn't have time for this bullshit. He's busy. He's repairing things. He's tying shoes. He's got to go outside. He's got to tie his shoes. Okay. I figure there were a lot of laces. It's a lot of laces. They got to be tied tight. You can't have your shoes coming untied when you're scaling cliffs and iron railings that are bent back sideways. You got to be fucking serious and double knot that shit.
Jesus.
I don't know. Yeah. So anyways, the logbooks tell us that the keepers were doing their normal duties through December 13th. They recorded a storm, but nothing crazy. There was no indications of stress or danger. There were, after the 13th though, we got nothing. No writing. Nothing happened. And then we know that the light's out on December 15th.
Right.
So let's talk about the weather between the 13th and the 15th, because that's when shit went down, right?
Yep.
Lights out on the 15th. They wrote it down on the 13th. What happened between the 13th and the 15th? We don't know. We do. On December 13th, 1900, this was a day of deteriorating conditions. Not crazy, but it's going downhill a little bit. Rising winds from the west, choppy seas are increasing, cloud covers thick, Scotland. There is no major storm yet, but the signs were there that a gale is a brewing, is what they would say on the sea. I've never been on the sea.
Do.
It's fine. I went out one time on a catamaran. That's the closest I've got to being out to sea.
Well, that's true. Yeah, we've done that.
I was in the Caribbean, and I think the water was like 20 feet deep.
We actually did that twice.
It was great. You should do it. It's delightful. But I would not be in the North Atlantic, I tell you that much. On December 14th, 1900, we're escalating here, okay? Weather reports from Lewis, which was the nearest major island, they show strong gale force winds, rain squalls. I like that word, squall. It's a fun word. There were rough seas pounding exposed coast, which aligns with the equipment, the ropes, the walkways, the railings, all of that. This was what they would call a full-on Atlantic winter blow.
Oh, not touching that.
So, on December 15th, 1900, the weather continued heavily. There were persistent high winds, powerful swells, and a barometric drop indicating unstable atmospheric pressure. This is not a hurricane, but it's bad, man.
Okay.
It's bad. So what does this mean? This was not a freak storm of the century. This is not the perfect storm situation, but it was a storm that does make Flannan Isles quite terrifying because these cliffs are 150 to 270 feet above sea level. The island has almost no natural shelter. The waves can slam 60 plus feet up rock walls. So any attempt at securing equipment could be extremely deadly if you're anywhere outside during any one of these squalls. I like that word. But it was serious, but it wasn't like, whoa, oh God, we're going to die. You know what I mean?
I do.
You know what I mean?
They do.
They do. I'm looking in the camera. Can't tell that if you're on Spotify, but that's okay. Head over to YouTube and you'll know. All right, so the official reports, Superintendent Robert Muirhead inspected the scene in early January. He concluded a severe storm hit. The keepers had gone out to secure equipment, and the giant sea swept one or more men away, and the others died trying to help.
Yeah, possible.
But let's talk about what the actual theories are.
Okay, let's do
Okay.
it.
Theory number 1, a rogue wave. We learned in the Mary Celeste that rogue waves are real.
Sure.
They exist. Science tells us they can happen. This is a boring kind of theory for these guys because, A, they're not on a ship, they're on an isle. I don't know what the difference between an isle and an island is. I assume it's smaller
I don't know.
because there's less letters.
Right.
I'm dumb.
Boy.
All right, so we know the West Landing was super, super duper dangerous with the sheer rocks, unpredictable swells, violent seas. The iron railings were bent back like licorice.
Okay.
I just think
You're
what
like, yeah.
wire, thin wire. Because technically, an iron railing is a wire. It's just a big one. Anyways, there was a supply box that was ripped off of its moorings, and there were ropes dragged down to the cliffs. The island obviously had a very violent history of sudden waves. So what might have happened is that one keeper goes down to secure equipment during the storm, the second goes to assist, and then the third follows when they fail to return. And it's just one after one getting swept off of the rocks. That fits the damage, the weather, their sense of duty. It doesn't require anything weird. But all three leaving the lighthouse at once was against regulation, and there were two men there that we absolutely know they followed regulations very strictly. So that's really weird. And why would they risk it? Like, that's just dangerous.
Eventually you'd have to.
No, it's against regulation.
So is dying. If I'm just going to sit there without supplies or whatever else needs to be done.
But they had supplies in the inside. It was warm, and there was no rain.
All right.
I mean, I know that kind of goes against like humanity of if somebody's in trouble, you should go help. But at least two people had to stay inside during bad weather. And one person, no matter what, had to stay inside.
Yeah, anyway, that's another theory. I won't get there yet.
Yeah. Theory number 2 is that there was a sudden storm or a weather bomb, like a cyclone microburst. This is like the rogue wave theory, but just a different what happened. And this would account for there's no bodies, there's no people. It matches the known weather patterns around the Hebrides, and that explains why they might have left urgently if equipment or stores were in danger, if they were in danger of losing them. But it's still three men outside. That's no bueno. Right. Don't do it. The kind of chain reaction accident theory, and this is the most human explanation. The 3 hardworking men got caught in a domino effect of split-second bad luck. essentially, one keeper goes out to secure the West Landing during bad weather. He goes out. Maybe he's like, ooh, this is a scary guy. I don't want to go out there. But he's got to do his job. Like, he's got to do his job. This is very important. Business as usual. Like, get out there, James. I forgot their names already. I think that was one of them. And a sudden wave hits. The first man is just, he's swept off the rocks.
Right.
He's dead. He's in the water. You're not coming back from that water. Nope. And then scent keepers, they're inside, and they're like, God, James is missing dinner. It's getting cold. I'm like, what's going on out there? And or maybe he screams, and they're like, oh shit.
You hear?
Yeah. So they hear that, and the guy's like, and James took his coat, right? Because when he's securing stuff, he took his coat, and then Thomas, I forgot their names. I need to look it up again. Thomas is like, ooh, I better go out there. So he grabs his coat. Okay? And then it's the same. Or maybe there's like a rope attached and he's trying to pull him up, and I don't know how hard it is to pull somebody up via rope, but if I believe movies, it's like really hard, and it pulls him in too. And then now you got those two keepers, they're in the water, or they're near, or they're in danger, they're dead or almost dying. And the last guy, he's like, I can't let him die. So he runs out. He forgot his coat. He's in a hurry.
Slips on a rock.
He has a sense of duty. He slips on a rock. He's in. The two guys hanging by rope, they get swept off eventually, or shark, I assume. So they all died. That's the end of that theory.
Oh.
What's really funny is nobody knows, because I'm going to edit all that out, is that we had to pause because you had to go in there and fix it and work on dinner. And so in between those couple of sentences, you got up and left, and then you came back, and I'm like, then they're all dead.
They're dead.
Okay. All right. So it's not funny that people died. No. I mean, I assume they died.
Funny.
That was right. So theory number 3 is that one of them had a psychological breakdown and lost his shit. I mean, the isolation for lighthouse keepers was pretty brutal on islands. On the coast of land, it was probably no big deal, but out on these islands, the isolation is absolutely brutal. There's constant wind. You've got, human contact with these two other dudes, but the routine is in the hard labor is quite a burden, I would say. So some suggest that one of them snapped, harmed the others, and then fell off a cliff, or it was a murder-suicide situation. The evidence that people try to use is that islands are well known to induce madness. Lighthouse work is physically and psychologically punishing. And then this 20, 30 years later, this emotional log entry that Marshall is praying and Ducat is crying and God is, I don't know, it's just crazy. Yeah. I think that people really like this theory because it's the dramatic one.
Sure.
It's the interesting one. And so, yeah. I mean, there are no signs of violence. It looked like they sat down to dinner. And there's
Logical.
2 coats missing. But
In this place, yeah, pretty sure it's easy to die.
I'm pretty sure it is. I'm pretty sure if you wanted to do harm to another, these islands would be very easy to do harm.
Yeah.
With the slickery steps and the cliffs. And I mean, if you fall off a cliff, you're toast.
Yeah.
You're toast. The problems here is that there was no boat to leave in. So if it was a murder suicide thing, then that's one thing. But if they were, just went off the rails and wanted to escape, there's no boat. There's a lifeboat. That's not a boat. I mean, it's a boat, but it's not a boat. It's not what you go out in a storm in.
It's not a ship.
It's a lifeboat. It's for the last ditch effort, bad news bears situation. Yep. They also left all of their gear, oilskins, boots. There has been no sightings of the 3 men thereafter. So they did not get off. I mean, they got off the island, but not alive. And most importantly, they were all known to be stable keepers with families. Like, this was their job and they were known to do it well. So they obviously had weathered the isolation before and it wasn't a problem. And fact of the matter is desertion is an extremely rare situation in lighthouse service. They don't just leave it, whether that be to escape or to off themselves. That's just not normal.
Yeah.
So, yep. There is also oddly a theory that there is some sort of foreign interference or like a secret boat that made it to the island, you know, spies, passing ships, smugglers, pirates, like they attacked, kidnapped, murdered, all of whatever the like. This is just absolute bananas because, again, no sign of a struggle. There were no other reports of ships in the area. And in fact, during this time of the year, there was very little traffic ship-wise in these sea passages. So it would be very, very strange. Also, what is a smuggler gonna steal from a fucking lighthouse?
Right.
Besides the lighthouse keepers. What, the kerosene?
Right.
And go down the street and get it.
More trouble than it's worth.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you have to bring up the obvious theories. What do you think I'm going to say? Aliens, kelpies, selkies, sea monsters, giant birds, giant freaking squids, or curses. You weren't supposed to be on the island. Situation, you know? This is very fun. It's also stupid as fuck. So we're not even gonna... Yeah. So what do you think happened?
They all fall off the cliff.
They all fall off
But
the
I'm
cliff?
wondering if, like, 2 of them, like, you know, let's just say
But why?
Two of them fell off the cliff in some form or fashion, and then the third one walks out there to look, and he's like, fuck it. He just, like...
Backwards?
Yeah.
Like swan dive?
It's like that.
Is that your real theory, or are you just being silly?
No, just maybe because he was just like, this is just too much to bear. You know, there's nobody's here now. There's no ladies coming by the lighthouse.
There weren't ladies coming by the lighthouse anyways.
2 guys that I know, but I mean, you know, he just finally got to him. It was like, I can't take this shit. And he just
He's just done.
Yeah. But anyway, they, you know, why
So you're taking the hybrid approach.
Why did they fall off the cliff? Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah.
Because it was a cliff.
Wow.
People fall.
Wow. Like, you know how to do it. Like, people,
They're-
like, guys, this is Jared in real life.
What, just straightforward logic?
It's not logic. He just blackbird off the cliff. Like, the what?
I mean, maybe there was just one rock that had some slick kerosene on it because, you know, it had a little oil in it.
They spilled the oil.
And they just went, every person that walked over there just whoop, whoop. It was almost like, you know, like a bad cartoon, just boop, then right
Like
off the
the
cliff.
banana
And then
peel?
Boop, right off the cliff. And then the third one, boop, right off the cliff.
Goodness. Okay. So I had to do, because you know me, I'm like a giant nerd here. I had to do more research before I could decide on which theory that I wanted to pick. Because first of all, it really bugged me about the story. And I know, like, maybe no, but I don't know how interesting you find the story. I'll ask you that in a minute. But it just really bugged me that at least the 2 seasoned lighthouse keepers were notorious rule followers. So I was like, how common is it for lighthouse keepers to break protocol? Statistically, it is absolutely uncommon for lighthouse keepers to break protocol. And in fact, their entire job, the culture, the expectations, the trainings which they underwent, were absolutely to prevent them from breaking protocol so that they wouldn't have done that. Because Lighthouse service was built on an almost military style mindset, they were taught that routine is sacred, records must be perfect. That really bugged me about the whole thing.
I understand. I mean, I get it. It's valid.
Yeah. I mean, these protocols existed because lighthouse keeping is it
was taken
dangerous job. And they knew that mistakes could kill people because the sea is just that dangerous. So, and moreover, is that most keepers were selected for their discipline. They knew that if they broke protocol and it was found out, they could lose their jobs. And their survival literally depended on not being an idiot. These men were not adventurers out there. They were just, I don't know why you would take this job, though. If you weren't into like adrenaline, I don't know. Maybe it's like deep sea welding where you get just paid a shit ton of money because it's so freaking dangerous. I should have looked up the salary for lighthouse keepers. Crap. Do that later. Opportunity missed. So this, I think, is what makes their disappearance so eerie. And I have to think that, I mean, obviously it was the storms. It was weather related. Right. They obviously slipped or got washed into the ocean, obviously. 2 coats were missing. I have to imagine that one went outside to secure the things, got into a spot of trouble, or just never came back. And the other one was like, I gotta go check on Bob. And he goes out there and same thing happens. And or I have to imagine the last guy left because he heard something that made him run out into the storm. Right. Because his sense of humanity overrode his sense of duty. Right. It has to be what happened.
I agree.
But it still doesn't, like, it still really bugs me. Like, these guys were like, no, we follow the rules. We follow the rules.
But like you said, your own human nature will throw the rules out the door at a certain point.
And because of that, they all died.
Yep.
I mean, here's the thing. This was a dangerous job, and dying happened. I don't think it was necessarily an everyday occurrence, but I don't think it's just unheard of in this sort of situation. And instead of 1 or 2 not making it, all 3 are gone. And like, just, God damn it, that's the whole point of the rules. I'm like a super rule follower for the most part. Like, I do not like breaking rules. It really bugs me. Like, I'm always on time, like ridiculously so. I hate lateness. As I show up at parties on time or like 15 minutes late, and most people show up like 30 to 45 minutes after a party starts, and it's just me and the host awkwardly looking at each other because I'm a freaking weirdo. I just, like, I don't know what that had to do with rules. That's like societal rules, but I hate lateness. It really bugs me. And like, some people are just late all the time, and I don't know what they do. Like, why are they not ready to go and sitting there and going, I can't leave for another 10 minutes or it's going to be freaking weird. That's how I spend my life.
Put a lot of thought into this.
Oh, I do. Oh, I like being on time. Like, I put a lot of thought into being on time for parties specifically because it's not socially really normal. You're not supposed to be on time for a party.
Yeah.
I go to so many parties.
Right.
I don't. Right. So, yeah, I just think this disappearance is super weird because these men were not supposed to be rule breakers. The rules kept them alive. And this is just a really weird disappearance that I think, especially I think because of the location, it's such an eerie and dangerous and weird place with the craggy rocks, and Scotland's weird. It's a beautiful place, but it's just weird. I've never been. But I am on Scottish people TikToks.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a lot of Scots that I follow because I like the way that their accents sound, which I can never do because it would be offensive. So
Well, now I understand why this story was so important to you, because of your rule-breaking impossibilities. I don't know.
Well, let me tell you the main reason the main reason that anyone even knows about this story today, it probably would have been completely forgotten if Wilford Wilson Gibson had not written a poem in 1912 called Flannan Isles, and he basically turned what was probably just a workplace tragedy into a supernatural folk tale. He made up a story about the door being open, there was an overturned chair, men vanishing in mid-sentence. Basically, he heard the story, thought it was eerie, wrote a creepy poem, and then everybody else was like, oh shit, ghosts. And we don't talk about ghosts on this podcast, so it's not ghosts.
Just talk about it privately.
Yeah, because I want this house to be haunted.
I know.
It's not.
Not so far.
Well, you say that, and I am
Peaceful,
like...
pretty peaceful house.
It is a very peaceful house. But you saw a figure on the stairs.
No, let's not. But you can't talk about ghosts on this podcast.
We cannot talk about ghosts on this podcast. Stop talking about it. Yeah. There was something about the Nile curse, because I think before it was turned into a lighthouse, it was it housed sheep. It was a sheep island.
Okay.
And then I don't know how that turned into curses. I guess the sheep were angry that they got.
Maybe.
That's obviously. So yeah, there is actually a ton of stories, musics, books, modern media that keep this little story alive. I'm doing it today because I put it on my podcast. So yeah, I think that humans cannot resist a mystery.
That's true.
That's true. I'm not going to read the poem to you, even though I wrote it in my little thing here, because I don't think that you like poetry. So, although I read you some poetry, and I think you liked it because I liked it, but...
Maybe. I don't know.
You had a very cute, what was the look? What's the look that I'm trying to think of? Like, you had this look of, you thought I was endearing when I was reading poems to you. Yeah. Was this a boring one?
No.
Like the Mary Celeste, that was your least favorite episode, I think, up until this point. Is this number 2?
No.
Oh.
No, what I'm about to say.
No.
No, it's not bad. I'm saying that I do prefer when stories are more of, well, what could have happened? Because these fuckers fell off a cliff.
Well, the Mary Celeste was a what could have happened.
Yeah, I don't remember, but yeah, I know.
You don't remember?
No, it was a ship. I mean, but it was. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, this was. I was more like, well, I know what happened.
Well, I do think. Yeah, it's obvious what happened. It's still just a really weird.
Yeah, it is.
It's just so. I like great. Little. I know. Maybe it's still a mystery because we don't know.
You're also, you've talked about the oddities of the fact that all these guys by protocol would not have done what they did, and they did, and they're dead. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's my whole story. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
I can shut this off. Yep. So that's it. Thanks for listening. It's the holidays around here. We obviously decorate for Christmas because we celebrate Christmas, even though we're not particularly religious, but we were raised in the Christian South, so we celebrate Christmas. Rate and review and subscribe. We want to have more than 32 subscribers. You know you want to do it. Oh, FYI, we have a regular liker on Facebook. Okay. Shout out to Chuck. He likes all of my posts. I haven't seen Chuck in a hot minute. We used to work together. Great guy. So shout out to Chuck. Thanks, buddy. See you later, alligator.
Bye.
I'm dumb.
remember what the sea will keep. If footsteps echo when no one's near, don't follow the path, it ends in fear.